another episode of the Table 442 podcast. I'm your co-host, Joe Fish, and I'm being joined by today from the magic of Zoom, my co-host, Mr. Aaron Priddy. How are you doing, Aaron?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm right, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Bit down on the Borough result, just a peek behind the curtain. We're recording this at about 3:00 Saturday afternoon. Borough just suffered a 1-0 defeat to Birmingham.
Wasn't great. It was probably as bad as I've seen all season. I think COVID's had a bit of a role to play in that. Same for everyone, so not an excuse. But I think we trained once in 10 days. Training ground's been shut since Monday last week. A few lads have had it, and it was evident out there today. Not going to be too disheartened by it because, it wasn't the team I've watched all season.
What about the Karanka factor? Anything to do with that?
He did us. He did us. They 1-0 up, and he brought an extra centre back on in. I think it was the 58th minute. So the old Karanka tactics.
That classic Spanish continental manager move, isn't it?
The old dark arts. I mean, loved it when he was doing it for us. And typically George Friend, who obviously was an absolutely fantastic servant for us, I think it was 8 years, still adored upon Teesside, put in a man of the match performance. First game back against us.
Came back to haunted former club.
Yeah.
Football cliche. Yeah. So not so good there. What other football have you had your eyes on this week?
I think obviously the main one. I watched the United Burnley match the other day. United winning that to go top of the league. Unfortunately, I watched Arsenal Palace, but it wasn't a classic. And then obviously the Borough match today. Got my eye on the Chelsea game later, and then obviously we've got the big one tomorrow.
Yeah, the big one tomorrow. Any chances of a Fulham upset? I watched Fulham Spurs Wednesday. I think Spurs made them look quite good, but they look like they're putting.
Do you know what? I feel like they've turned a bit of a corner. You know, at the start of the season, you had them nailed on to go down, but I think there's an opportunity there. Chelsea, it's hot and cold. You don't know which Chelsea team are going to turn up at the moment, so I think there's every chance of an upset, especially in a derby game.
Yeah, let's see. We'll get on to Liverpool, Man United a little bit later on in the show, and Man United Burnley, I think, will feature quite prominently in our first section, which is this week on WhatsApp. So here, this is where we discuss kind of what we've been speaking about in our WhatsApp groups this week. That's like the WhatsApp group that me and Aaron are a part of, along with several others, was kind of like the seeds for this podcast. Basically, we were spamming everybody on there with football chat all the time, and they told us to jog on and find somewhere else to chat about it. So this is where we are. Aaron, what were kind of the headlines on the WhatsApp group this week?
I think the biggest debate was around the Luke Shaw tackle. Was it a foul? Was it a red card, etc.? We had a couple of United fans in our group that were adamant it wasn't even a foul.
They're United fans.
So you wouldn't have guessed it, would you?
Yeah, you are. No, would not have known.
The same two the week before that were telling us that the level of contact doesn't matter. If you make contact, it's a foul, and that's why the Pogba trip was 100% a penalty against Villa. But a week later, Luke Shaw, ankle height on someone, studs up. Oh, you've got to understand though, he's going for the ball there. He's going for the ball. It's
ankle height, generous as well. That was high. That was yeah. So I assume from that time you feel it was a red.
I wasn't even arguing that it was a red. I've seen them given as red, but it'd been justified a yellow, I think, because I don't think it was malicious. I don't think there was intent there, but I do think you do have a responsibility to sort of protect your opponent. It's not a case of and this is the point I was trying to explain in the WhatsApp group, but maybe it wasn't coming across. There's a difference between touching the ball and winning the ball. Yeah. He didn't win the ball. Their argument was, if you're looking super, super slow-mo, you can see it might possibly flick off the edge of his boot, in which case that's not a foul. I was trying to explain that, one, just making a slightly bit of contact with the ball doesn't stop it being a foul. That's not winning the ball.
I think you see red cards given for players who take like all of the ball and the ball goes 30 yards in one direction, but then they take all of the man at knee height. So I don't think it's a black and white, certainly not a black and white thing.
Agreed. I wasn't saying it was a straight red. It would have been perfectly happy with the yellow, but I'm also not having what they were saying, where they were claiming it not even a free kick because he might have touched a little bit of the ball in the process of
Yeah.
absolutely clattering the man.
Yeah, I don't think it's one of those that it's a definite red,
No.
but I think I have seen reds given for less serious and less
Yeah.
dangerous offences. Like, I think, to be fair, I mean, I think football needs to have a look at what what constitutes a red card offence now. Like, because do we want that sort of tackle to be a red card? Probably not.
No,
But
I
then, like
don't.
anything that's like face to face or someone shoves somebody, which isn't really dangerous or anything like
Yeah,
that,
it's
that's
like
just
the
straight
tap.
away a red
Yeah.
card. And I don't think that. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that
No,
makes
I
any sense.
agree. The refs, I know the rules say if you lift a hand, but I feel like there's got to be a
Yeah.
bit of thinking on your feet with that. I mean, going back to Borough, we had one, not that I'm bitter or anything, but we had one years ago, Jeremy Ayadier against Liverpool.
Wow, that is years. That is years.
Javier Mascherano got up and sort of pushed him, and Ali Adier put his hand into his face and just pushed him away. It wouldn't have, not even enough force to push a toddler over. But Ali Adier got a red card. We appealed it, and the FA extended the ban and classed it as a frivolous appeal. So
Yeah.
you look at that, it's
I was
just
expecting you to say years ago, like Jordan Rhodes, or years ago, but no, years ago, Jeremy Aliadier. No, what
yeah,
next? Oh, yeah, the other week from Fabrizio Ravanelli.
yeah. It's about 2008 that, but I'm still bitter.
Yeah, no, I got that. I think like a frustration from my point of view, and I think that it's like boiling in the chat. It's boiling up, reaching boiling point. That kind of Man United VAR penalties, etc., etc. I honestly don't think that United have had any shockers given to them in the last few weeks. I don't think like it's been like that's definitely not a penalty or that's definitely a red card or anything like that. But there does seem to have been an accumulation of marginal calls go in their favour.
Yeah.
And like not only go in their favour, but go in their favour and really affect games. So that red card, the Pogba penalty, the ball going out of play against West Ham.
Yeah.
So like that's probably across the space of 5 games, and like every one of those decisions is like potentially had a significant impact on the result of the game, and they've ended up top of the league. So I think they've rode their luck a little bit. I do think they're playing well. I think they're probably, apart from maybe City coming into a bit of form, they're playing the best football in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they've had a little bit of fortune to get there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's good to see them back where they are. Obviously, a huge club. The more competition, the better. Especially with me, I've not got a horse in the race in the Premier League, so I'm happy to see as an exciting title race as possible. So
Yeah,
it's good to
I
see
mean,
them
a Man U Liverpool Man City title race will create a lot of interest, a lot of emotion in the north. So definitely not against that. I mean, from a personal point of view, I'd love Spurs to try and hang on to those coattails, but I can't see that happening.
No, just tailed off a bit, haven't you? Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have many opportunities on this podcast to discuss the desperate life of the Spurs fan. Moving on a little bit, another thing that came up in the chat this week related also to Manchester Club was the recent performances of one Philip Foden. Couple of goals lately, a winner against was it winner against Brighton at the near post? And that was the near post finish against Chelsea, and the goal in the cup as well.
Yeah.
Just how good is this kid?
Oh, mate, he's got the world at his feet, hasn't he? He's one of them. You look at him and you think he can be as good as he wants to be. I know Pep says obviously he's managed some incredible players, including Lionel Messi, but he says he's one of the best he's worked with. So never considered selling him, letting him go out on loan, because he always said he was the heir apparent to David Silva's throne. And obviously now with Silva moving on, we'll get to see more of him this season, and he really looks like he's fulfilling that promise that everyone thinks he's got.
Yeah, I think he's playing a little bit further forward than people might have expected.
Yeah.
Like playing off, I mean, City's formation is obviously very fluid, and they don't have a recognised striker at the moment. But he seems to be playing off the left, where I think a lot of people expected him to fit into that Silva role, like
pulling the
midfield
strings,
pulling the strings. Yeah, so no, he's been so impressive. I mean, another one on the England radar, surely, for the summer.
And it's exciting, isn't it? Because you're starting to look now at the England team and think, like, wow, where are we fitting these players in? Like, You look
Yeah,
at Foden.
Foden, Grealish.
Yeah, like where'd you play them? The
Are you,
two
are you asking me or?
Just saying, like as a general point, like you look at the team and like the front three, I wouldn't want to pick it. Like, although Sancho perhaps not having as good a season this year, so you could move Sterling outright. Then who'd you put left? Like you say, Foden's been playing from the left for City brilliantly. You could argue he'd go in there, Rashford in there. I wouldn't want to pick it, but it's a nice headache for Gareth to have.
Yeah, nice headache, and he'll probably pick Mason Mount anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like Mason Mount's good as well. Like nothing wrong with Mason Mount, but I just feel like he's the type of player given these options to choose from that England managers always would have picked. Effectively, a slightly safer.
It's like the safe option.
Yeah, he is creative. He is good. He works hard off the ball. Nothing wrong with Mason Mount as a footballer, but come quarter-final time where we tend to fall short, especially with those kind of like ball players in the final third, he's not going to cut. He's probably not going to cut it for you.
And that's like you said, it's not a knock on him. He's a good young player, but we've got some outstanding young players coming through, and just hope that we're willing to take a bit of a gamble on them.
Yeah. Where do you think Foden stands in the great British prospects of the Premier League? And talk about Greenwood and Saka, Hudson-Odoi, people like that.
I would probably personally, I'd put him top. I think it's probably between him and Mason Greenwood. I'd say are probably just a level above the others. But I think I'd put Foden just that little bit ahead of Greenwood. Again, Greenwood, outstanding prospect. Another one who looks like he can be as good as he wants to be as long as he keeps his head screwed on. But I think that Phil Foden's got the potential to be the absolute best out of the lot.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it from like just a purely England perspective, I certainly think Foden. I think like he's just, like I said, he's kind of got that missing ingredient of intelligence and movement and creativity and vision in the final third that we've often lacked at crunch times. Like I think Greenwood will be a really good goal scorer in the Premier League, and I'm sure for England. But I think England have gone to major tournaments before and had really good goal scorers.
Yeah.
So I think he will be certainly an England international and a regular down the line. But I don't think he's like the key, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he will have a very, very good Premier League career.
Yeah, agreed.
Probably equally to Foden, but I think Foden stands out a bit. So, anything else from the WhatsApp groups this week? I don't think so, but I think it might get a little bit.
It'll get spicy tomorrow, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it already. I apologise in advance to Ant, who I think sometimes thinks we're arguing when we're getting a bit heated, but it's all good natured.
Yeah, trust me, Ant, you'll know when we're being genuinely serious and not joking, because we will go in on Pete.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll move on from that section of the show, and we'll come on to what we think is going to be a regular feature on the Table 442 podcast. Now, we love football. We love talking about football. We love talking about the positive things, like Phil Foden, for example. But there are things in football that we don't love, and this is where me and Aaron each contribute something from the game that we would like to see sent to a place where I think Alan Kirbishley, David O'Leary, several Premier League managers have been sent into exile, and that's where we hope these ideas will go in this section we're calling Gardening Leave. So, Aaron, start us off. What would you like to see rid of modern day football?
The thing that I'd like to be sent on gardening leave is bookings for celebrations, especially for taking your top off. It's not because I want to see topless men running around the pitch, but I just think in that moment, that excitement, that adrenaline, everything just takes over you. And to get a booking for something so mundane is stupid. Again, going back to it, as I have repeatedly already, I'm a Borough fan. I grew up
in 2003. Noel Whelan got booked.
No, I grew up loving Fabrizio Ravanelli, who, as you'll remember, I imagine, was the first, I think, player to come to the Premier League and celebrate by pulling his shirt over his head, running like that. Great celebration. Spent half my childhood running around doing it with my cousin Liam. Booking now For what? It's stupid. It's
Yeah.
emotion. It's an emotion-filled game. It's not harming anybody. Again, it's one
It
of
goes,
those rules.
it goes back to that what we said earlier about, you know,
Common
the
sense.
kind of the discipline side of football needing just to look at,
Right.
yellow card for a celebration, yellow card for what Luke Shaw did. I'm not saying that was a red card from Luke Shaw, but they're clearly not parallel offences, are they?
No, exactly. And don't get me wrong, there'll be people who do over celebrate or do something. For instance, I can understand the yellow card for jumping into the crowd. You can cause everybody to rush forward, someone can get injured. I can understand that and I can accept that. But taking your top off for 10 seconds in the heat of the moment, if you've just scored the winner in the Champions League final, getting a booking for it, it's just, I hate it. It does my head in. It's an emotion filled game.
Yeah,
And it just knocks
I
me in the head.
understand, but also a follow-up question: why is there the need to take your top off when you get emotional? I don't think I've ever get like really excited. Probably because I don't look like most Premier League
Yeah, I
footballers.
was going to say, if you look like Cristiano Ronaldo, then I'd probably
Yeah,
I'd probably be a bit more inclined to whip my top off in moments of excitement. But as it is, I'm more Dean Windass, so it's not something that's ever struck me.
yeah. I don't know quite what build I would be as a footballer. Someone incredibly slender,
Phil
gets
Foden.
knocked off the ball easily. Yeah, Phil Foden. Maybe Phil Foden. I mean,
Phil Foden.
I was once described as a cross between Eden Hazard and Luka Modric. But yeah, I think that was
Was that by your mum?
it was my mum. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Julie just giving you a
Boost
little
the
bit.
confidence a little bit after I got subbed by dad. Yeah, difficult family upbringing regarding the football. But that's quite topical, Aaron, actually, because emotional, passionate celebrations at the moment a bit in the news because they're talking about footballers need to be celebrating
Yeah.
separately to do with COVID. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Again, can understand. I mean, it's running wild obviously at the moment in football teams. Back to what I was saying about us, we've been wiped by it for the last 2 weeks, so they do need to do something to get a grip on it. And I think stopping big 11-man pylons if you score a goal is probably a good place to start. Realistically, is it going to make that much of a difference? No. You're a corner, you're all bundled in the box right next to each other, jockeying for space, breathing all over each other. There's no difference between that and patting each other on the back after a goal. So
Yeah,
can understand the
I think
thought behind it, but
that's my argument because I think managers, what's annoyed a few people is managers have come out and like argued against the principle of it. Oh, well, imagine scoring as a debutant or imagine scoring a 90th minute winner. It's just too emotional. Like, it's definitely not too much to ask footballers not to do that.
yeah,
But it doesn't make any sense when they're playing in a contact sport and coming up against each other and rubbing bodies against each other and grabbing each other at set pieces all the time.
Exactly.
So,
and players do have the self-restraint to do it. Think about when players go back and score against a former club. The amount of times you see them just do the old and
don't get started on that. That might feature in Garden League a few weeks down the line.
I'm not.
Yeah, but yeah, and you saw like people like Haaland. I remember there's that quite famous one when the Bundesliga returned of Haaland celebrating and like doing a dance and like, but nobody else was anywhere near, and then everyone else was just doing a dance like
20 meters away.
Yeah. To think of it, that is really odd. I would want to avoid that situation all over again.
I wouldn't be up for that.
I think that's a strong shout, Aaron. It might. I mean, I don't want to admit defeat too early, but it might have me beat because mine is something that I find really annoying myself, but I'm not sure it is more a universal thing, whereas I think yours might be. So the thing that really annoys me is when in added time, when people are getting subbed and they're walking off slowly, that's not what annoys me. It's like the reaction from the opposition to it. So yeah, like like coming over and pushing them off, or like dragging them, or like I feel like there's an instance where someone was picked up off the pitch, like that. Like that just only slows the game down further. Like when Tottenham players do this, I get so annoyed because I'm like, you're just costing more time because then they'll just turn around and be like, what are you doing? What you're doing?
Exactly. I was just about to say, it just slows them down. No one ever gets that little push and goes, "Oh, actually, sorry, you're right, mate," and then jogs off. They always stop on the spot and turn around and look at the guy that's pushed them as if to say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, or they'll get the referee involved and it'll just wind like that. And And a more general thing is that then surely footballers need to have some perspective, is that like they would do the exact same thing in
Yeah,
that
exactly.
situation if the roles were reversed and they were winning 1-0 in stoppage time.
Yeah,
So I think that's a more general thing, is that like footballers, I know it's just like an art of conning the referee and stuff, but they're so funny with their hypocrisy to do with decisions and like time wasting
yeah,
and stuff like that. So yeah, that really annoys me, and I think
yeah.
it happened in a game I was watching a couple of weeks ago. So that it's fresh in the mind.
It is.
But I don't think I can make a case for it above stopping people from celebrating. If we're talking about exempt from COVID
Yeah,
reason,
COVID
I think
aside.
booking for COVID aside, bookings for celebrations
It's
is
just
pretty
yeah.
petty. It's like the referee just like giving him a yellow card because he's not involved. It's like that kid in the playground that's not
Yeah,
picked, and it's like,
exactly.
oh,
And it's all
I
right.
can't be part of that. So there you go.
The only other way I
Yeah,
can get anything over you is I just
yeah,
hate it, and it extends to like footballers with messages, and you can see sometimes the referee hate it. Like when players die or something tragic's happened, and you see a player like lift the shirt up and it's got like a message like R.I.P. Antonio Puerta or something like that, and you can see the
yeah,
referee cringing as he's booking all the players, and it's like they don't want to do it. Like make exemptions.
yeah. Most of them don't want to do it.
Yeah,
Most of them.
you can see they
Yeah.
don't. I
There's
mean,
a few of them
people
they
like
want
Nicholas Bentner lifting his top up and showing his Paddy Power boxes, I can understand that.
to. Yeah. No.
Leagues,
Well,
whatever, have got sponsorship deals, but yeah, on the whole, whack that on gardening leave does amazing.
yeah. You have sold it to me. No problem. So yellow cards for excessive celebrations in most cases, that is going on gardening leave. Right, so we reached the headline section of the show, and we spoke a little bit earlier about kind of the seeds for this podcast being planted in our WhatsApp groups, and I think that was way back when in lockdown number 1, when Sky and Jamie Carragher was involved in all these, like doing these really fun combined 11s to do with players from the Premier League, but you can only pick one from one country or one from one club and stuff like that. So that really got the conversation started. So each week we're going to do, our final section is going to be a combined 11, but a bit spiced up, which we're calling a fun bind 11, which took me all of 10 seconds to come up with. And this week, with the big game, Liverpool Man United top of the table clash, we are going to do a Liverpool versus Man United combined 11, but with a difference. It's going to be the Man United treble winners of 1999 against the Liverpool Premier League champions of last year. Aaron, just before we get onto the teams, how do you see the game going tomorrow?
I was discussing this morning with one of my mates who's a Liverpool fan, and every single week without fail, he'll put in our WhatsApp group, lads, bet against Liverpool this weekend. There's not a chance we're winning this. I said to him, if I followed your tips every weekend, I'd be bankrupt, and Liverpool would be in the Isthmian North League by now.
He's like anti-Mark Lawrenson then.
Yeah, he's essentially exactly the opposite of Mark Lawrenson. Mark Lawrenson hasn't had them to lose or drop a point, I think, since about 1997.
It was since that Jeremy Aliadier incident.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, following on, and but for once I agree with him. I think United will do Liverpool tomorrow.
Really?
Liverpool just hot and cold this season. Still, obviously, a fantastic team. But I think the loss of Van Dijk, especially, it's just huge for them. And
it's catching up with them a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they lost Van Dijk and Gomez, and everyone was like predicting some sort of catastrophe, and they held it together really well for about a month or 6 weeks. And now Matip's been out a bit as well, unfortunately. And without having those defenders, those results have become a bit unsustainable, and they're falling off a bit. So it's a great opportunity for Man U. I think, like I said, Man U probably playing some of the best stuff in the league at the moment.
Yeah,
I do think they are. Yeah, I mean, Fernandes has been incredible. I think he's been the best player in the league since he arrived last January. What I would say is I do think they're quite reliant on him, and I've just noticed the last couple of games he looks like he's tiring a little. So he's played so many games for them in the last year. He's not having a winter break this year, which he's used to. He certainly wouldn't be the first very, very good player to come over here and fall foul around this time of year for hectic schedules. I mean, there is a certain arrogance of the Premier League, like, oh, come and do it in the Premier League, which doesn't make any
cold, wet night in Stoke and all that.
Exactly. Like, and he's certainly a player that has laughed that off, and he's clearly one of the best players in the league. But I do feel like he's just flagging a bit, and possibly has been propped up by his penalties from like a goal scoring assisting point of view in the last couple of weeks. I still think he's, like I said, one of the best players in the league, but I feel like he might just go through a quiet spell over the next month or so, and therefore United's credentials will be tested seriously, because without him, as proven by where they were in the league without him, I think they'd be right in that pack.
Yeah, I think
like 5th and 6th. So
what is a positive for United fans is specifically the night against Burnley is the recent form of Paul Pogba.
Yeah,
he was absolutely outstanding the other day against Burnley. Again, in WhatsApp, one of the United lads commented saying that how can he put in a performance like that compared to performances you've seen earlier in the season, because he was absolutely brilliant. And I think if he can maintain a bit of that form, it'll perhaps take a bit of the pressure and expectations off Bruno, which I imagine physically he's probably pretty burned out, like you say. He's also probably a bit mentally burned out as well with the title push and this and that, and knowing how much of that rests on his shoulders. It's probably a lot for him to take. So with someone who is undoubtedly as talented as Paul Pogba, he can start to step up and take a bit of that pressure off Bruno. I think that'll be better for United as a whole.
Yeah, and I mean, Ollie doesn't get loads of credit outside of kind of Old Trafford circles, but he's got to be given a bit of credit for how he's worked with Pogba over the last 6 weeks. Obviously, there were comments for the agent and from the agent, and everyone was saying it was the beginning of the end for Pogba at Man U, like for the 5th time. And Ollie's brought him back in. He's played pretty much every game in a more prominent role, and he was pretty good against Aston Villa, against West Ham. He scored that from about 25 yards, didn't he? And good against Burnley. So if he can translate that into real big game performances, then that will take the burden off Fernandes, and you can see United have an extra weapon to challenge Liverpool and City. So really interesting game. Looking forward to it. And it would be a very interesting game if we could pit United's treble winners against Liverpool's Premier League winning side. Unfortunately, we can't do that, but the best we can do is come up with our fun bind 11 between the two sides. So have you got your 11 ready, Aaron?
I have, mate. I've got it up on the screen in front of me. That's what I keep glancing at.
Here we go. Start us off then with your goalkeeper.
I've gone for the Great Dane, Peter Schmeichel. At first, it felt like a bit of a tough choice because obviously Alisson's fantastic, but then when I sat back, I thought about it. It wasn't really a tough choice for me. I think I'd pick Schmeichel, Peter Schmeichel every day, not just for his goalkeeping, but for his all-around play. The way he just talked his defence through games, he was great, and he'd go straight in for me.
Yeah, no arguments from me. I think, that says everything about Schmeichel. The fact that Alisson is, comfortably this season, the last 18 months, the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, not far off the best goalkeeper in the world, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. And Schmeichel kind of gets in at a canter. I think it's difficult. Like, I didn't see loads of Schmeichel play, but when doing this kind of thing dating back to 1999, you kind of have to go a little bit off reputation or of what you've heard from other people. And like he's considered the best goalkeeper in the history of the Premier League. And I don't think you could put Alisson on his level just yet. And I think Alisson has come in and made a big difference at Liverpool, but Schmeichel was kind of one of the players, like kind of after Cantona came in, then Schmeichel came in, that was kind of thought to have the big difference in turning that group of United youngsters into a proper winning side. So I think Schmeichel slots in.
One of the bedrocks of that dynasty, that all conquering United team that just seemed to go on forever. He was, he was just like a mythical figure in that almost, wasn't he?
Yeah, very imposing. What about across the back four? Do you want to give me both centre halves you've got first?
Yeah, so I've gone for, probably unsurprisingly, Virgil van Dijk. Could sit and talk for hours about him, but there's probably nothing I'd say that not everybody wouldn't already know. Just
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
And then I've partnered him with Jaap Stam, who was only at United for a relatively brief period for whatever reason you choose to believe. But in that time was arguably as good as anyone that's ever been in the Premier League. He was
Mm.
great. Again, an absolute stalwart in the heart of that United defence in that all-conquering treble season. So he gets in there for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty formidable partnership.
Wouldn't like to
Yeah, both Dutch, obviously. That will probably help with the chemistry. And yeah, no, absolutely no arguments for me. I think Van Dijk, best centre half in the world, bar none at the moment. Stam would have been in that kind of bracket during his own generation. I think like a big tick in Stam's box is just how badly United missed him after he left.
Yeah.
So 99 I could just about remember, nothing predating that, but they went for a succession of centre halves after that United until they found Ferdinand about 3 or 4 years later to lead that defence, and Stam left a big hole to fill. So yeah, I think that's a natural pairing considering what the other options are. What about fullbacks?
Left back was a no-brainer for me. Gone straight in with Andy Robertson from Liverpool. For me, I'd say best left back in the world at the moment. Picked up such a modest fee as well from Hull, and he seemed to just get better and better and better. Right was probably the place that I had the biggest sort of dilemma with. I really could not pick between Trent and Neville, and I went backwards and forwards. Eventually, I went for Trent though.
I think even Gary Neville
would say that.
Hold his hands up for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it depends. Like if you're playing in 1990, I mean, fullbacks have evolved so much.
Yeah, that's it's hard to compare because although they're the same position, they're so different. And as good as Neville was going forward, and he was terrific linking down that right hand side with David Beckham, he's not in the same league as Trent going forward, and Trent's delivery, set pieces, passing, etc., etc. Probably a little bit of rose tinted specs for me with weighing it up as much as I did. But in the end, yeah, I went for Trent because, again, probably think arguably best right back in the world at the moment.
Yeah, certainly from an attacking perspective, I think like even Neville in his day was probably seen as quite an adventurous right back. Like not incredible quality, but good on the overlap, decent crosses. But like, I mean, Trent just dwarfs that, and I don't think Trent's defensive shortcomings would be enough for Neville. Like Neville wasn't an unbelievable defender. He wasn't a great one-on-one defender. He's just a really tough footballer that was pretty
nightmare to play against
across the pitch. Yeah, like wouldn't give you an easy afternoon, but it's not like he was super quick or super strong. If you talk about like a one-on-one defender, like someone like Wan-Bissaka at Man U would probably be a tougher one-on-one opponent than Neville, but Neville just had a great mentality and a great attitude.
Yeah.
And I think on the other side of the pitch, Robbo, for me, best left back in the world. And, there'll be some United fans that maybe don't like that. Dennis Irwin has a great reputation.
Yeah.
United fans, like any players that you speak to from that team, Roy Keane especially, like, probably the only footballer I've ever seen not to get panned by Roy Keane.
Yeah.
Just like says he's like an 8 out of 10 every week. But I don't like, he certainly was never the best fullback in the world. And Robertson is. So I think those two for Liverpool, definitely deserve their place.
Yeah.
What formation are you playing, Aaron?
Probably like a 4-2-2-2.
4-2-2-2.
Yeah, so I've got 2 centre mids, 2 wingers, 2 strikers.
Okay, talk me through your 2 centre mids.
2 men that, Keane and Scholes again.
Keane and Scholes, yeah,
just a no-brainer. Shout out to Hendo, who had a brilliant season last year for Liverpool. Was absolute great skipper material, the type of guy that you'd follow into the trenches. But from a footballing perspective, he wouldn't get in ahead of Keane or Scholes. Keane,
Yeah.
bit of a lunatic,
I
but
think
what a player!
Keane is like what those kind of qualities that Henderson brings.
Yeah,
Keane brings times 5, surely. Like, well, maybe that's slightly disrespectful to Henderson,
no,
but he brings everything of that, and I think,
but ramped up.
yeah, ramped up and is probably a better footballer. I mean, Keane, like people forget that Keane was a really
Yeah,
good player. We
people
just see
do
him on the
forget.
screen now and think he was a nutter,
Yeah,
but
people
like
think
he was a goal scorer, he was a tackler, he could travel with the ball, he was
he was
really good and
fantastic.
yeah, exactly. And alongside Scholes, I think that's a natural parent. I think if there's any place where Liverpool are short of world-class players, I know they've bought in Thiago this year and we've not really
Yeah,
seen much of him
not
yet.
seen enough of him, yeah.
It is in central midfield, and I think Keane and Scholes is one of the best partnerships that you could get in there. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's a no-brainer, which is slightly disappointing because we haven't had much contention
No,
in the 11 yet. But going into the front 4 positions, maybe we will. Who have you got? So you've chosen 2 wingers. Who have you got out wide?
the flip of having a United pairing in the middle, I've got 2 Liverpool players out wide. I've got Mane and Salah.
Yeah.
I think from a goal scoring perspective and what they brought to that Liverpool team last season on the way to the title, I couldn't leave either of them out. Got some stats up here. Mane got 22 goals last year across all competitions. Salah got 23. They just brought so much that I couldn't leave either of them out. Obviously, people might look, and I don't know whether you've got any different, might look and say, oh, what about Ryan Giggs? But for me, I'd pick Mane on the left over Giggs every day of the week.
Yeah. I have got Salah and Mane, and I don't have Giggs, but I do have Beckham in like a 4-3-3, like a Beckham on the right-hand side of that 3.
The front 3 or the middle 3?
The middle 3. So I've got like Keane, Scholes, and Beckham as my middle 3, and then Salah and Mane out wide in the front 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because I don't think the strikers for either side are especially. I mean, we'll get to that, and this is where we maybe will have a disagreement. But I don't think they're of an especially high level compared to other positions in the side.
Mm-hmm.
I think like whoever plays up front in this side, the top goal scorers will still be certainly Salah and then probably Mane.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted to get somebody more of a supply line into them rather than an extra goal scorer.
Okay.
Plus, like Beckham has a lot of very good qualities, and I think if he was playing today in the kind of 4-3-3s that are very popular across Europe, he would play there. I don't think he would play wide right.
He did
I
it
think
for
he would play in
PSG,
that kind of.
didn't he?
Yeah, he would play in that kind of.
That middle bit, almost like a quarterback, a little bit like a B-Sec Andre Pirlo by the time he was doing it. His legs
Yeah, he could play that, or like where De Bruyne takes up those really narrow positions. I mean, he's nowhere near as his delivery probably is as good as De Bruyne. He's nowhere near as dynamic as De Bruyne and can get create space, get past his man to get those balls in. But that's kind of where I would see him playing if he played now. So I've squeezed him in the middle, but I'm not very precious about it. So I'm very interested to hear your argument for 2 strikers.
Do you want to hear them now?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So I've gone for Cole and York. As good a strike partnership as the Premier League's ever seen. Not saying it's necessarily the best, but you'd be pushed to argue that there's been consistently better. Again, I've looked at some stats earlier. Cole got 24 goals in 50 games that season. York 29 and 52. So both outscored Mane and Salah from the Liverpool's Premier League winning season. Obviously, Mane and Salah aren't straight out centre forwards; they're wingers. But the way Liverpool play, they basically almost play like strikers, don't they? Playing off, feeding off Firmino.
Yeah.
Cole, again, I was probably a bit too young to remember watching them week in, week out like the players we watch now, who I could speak easier about. But I think the importance to the United team of both of them and their goals. York 8 in 11 Champions League games that season. I wanted them in because I just think goals.
Yeah, certainly a great partnership in their time, and some very impressive statistics for that year, which are difficult to argue with. I've not got either of them in though, and I think it's more about the shape that I've picked. So like I've gone for Firmino, and I'm not like massively on the Firmino hype when all Liverpool fans are like, oh, he's our most important player because it's crucial to Klopp's shape and all that.
System and all that.
Yeah, he is the system, exactly. Like he's a good player.
Yeah.
He's not in the top 5 most important players in that team, in my opinion.
No.
But I just think it playing one up front, I'm not sure Cole or York are kind of mobile or athletic enough or hardworking enough to do that role and create the space. For me, this team's all about Salah and Mane.
Yeah.
So, and that supply line coming from Beckham and Scholes. So I would have Firmino in there to complement Salah and Mane, even though I know he would probably score 10 fewer a season than both Cole and York.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the stats on Salah and Mane last year, not quite as impressive.
Yeah.
But Salah in the previous couple of seasons, obviously incredible numbers.
Oh God, yeah. Most goals ever in a Premier League season, which is crazy.
Exactly, yeah. So we are doing Liverpool's Premier League winners against United's treble winners, but I feel like Liverpool's Premier League winners is a kind of crescendo from the kind of two seasons before it. Whereas United is potentially like a one-off unique achievement. Obviously, they had great sides either side, but that particular treble-winning side. So I've got Firmino in there, but it's just for the shape, really.
No, I can understand it. I tossed and turned with having Bobby because although, what did he get last season? 12 in 52. So for the position that he plays, he doesn't score a great deal of goals. But like you say, his contribution to that Liverpool team is so much more than his goals. You could argue that despite that, playing in such a good, dominant attacking team up front, whether that's your primary responsibility or not, you should probably score more than 12. At the same time, I'm not a Firmino knocker. I do really, really rate him, and I think his importance to that Liverpool team can't be understated.
Yeah, so I think it's a case of I'm not married to having Firmino in there, but I'm not convinced you'd get the best out of Salah and Mane in what's effectively a 4-4-2.
Yeah, so I've basically got it like a 4-2-2, but I think York getting 29 in 52 that season is a good season.
That's pretty difficult to ignore, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'd be happy, take out Cole, bring in Beckham in the middle like you've got him, and then move Mane and Salah forward, playing off York as a front three. Don't have Bobby to pivot off, but you would hope between Scholes, Keane and Beckham, the delivery would be good enough for the front three to feed off without having someone to play off.
Yeah, certainly a pretty good supply line behind them, and then the supply line coming from the fullbacks as well.
That, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Robbo and Trent overlapping, swinging them into York, Mane, Salah.
In fact, now you're convincing me that with Trent and Robbo down the flanks, Beckham in a narrow position, you get 2 strikers in the box. I know that's obviously it doesn't work. That's not how Liverpool work it. With Trent and Robbo and Salah and Mane do get in the box, but Cole and York like penalty box strikers, so they would thrive on Trent and Robbo's service. But I think I'd like Beckham in there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
it would. Don't get me wrong. It was hard for me to leave David Beckham out. I was an absolute Beckham lover. Had every England shirt with Beckham 7 on the back. It was about what was I 12 when he scored the free kick against Greece, and absolutely the next day was adamant that my dad needed to take me out and get me some new Predators. Absolutely grew up in that era of David Beckham being king, so it was hard for me to leave him out. But I'd be more than happy to get Cole out, put Beckham in the middle, find some space to accommodate him, especially in, like you say, I think his role would be adapted quite a lot in this modern era.
Yeah, No, I'm happy with that. And so if we're going one up front, we're going with York based on his goal record that
Yeah,
season.
that season. I think 29 and 52 is hard to leave out. 8 and 11 in the Champions League. I also feel like if you did need someone to play off, I feel like York would be a bit better to play off than Andy Cole, who was very much on the shoulder striker, getting behind.
Yeah, I can't remember Cole really playing as a one
No,
very much. Every time I think of Cole,
yeah.
he's in a two.
Yeah, I couldn't picture Cole playing in a one. He's more not in any way being disparaging, great Premier League striker, but he was more in the box he'll come alive type. Where I feel like York would bring more on his own up top.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, like York went back into midfield at a bit later in his career, didn't he? So perhaps as a rounded footballer, not just as a pure finisher, maybe offers a little bit more than Cole does. Yeah, cool. So I think we're in agreement. We've got Schmeichel in goal, Trent, Van Dijk, Stam, and Robertson across the back, with a midfield three of Keane, Beckham, and Scholes, and then Salah, Mane, and York up front. So what does that give us? How many Man U players we got? We got Schmeichel, Stam, Keane, Beckham, Scholes, and York. So United edge it 6-5.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
as good as Liverpool were last season, I think their really important players were so standout that the rest of them were perhaps a little bit more dispensable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like, I think like Liverpool have like 4 or 5 players who are potentially the best in the world in their position, and you could, and this isn't taking away the roles in which they play, which they played in that success, like your Henderson's, Wijnaldum's, second centre backs, etc. But I think quite a few players could have played those roles. That's not saying they didn't play them brilliantly, but it's not like you could just swap Van Dijk out or Trent out for anybody else in the Premier League.
You can't just go and find another Van Dijk where you could fill Gini's role with somebody else. And like you say, that's not being disparaging towards Wijnaldum. He had a great season last year, but there's another Gini Wijnaldum out there. There's only one Van Dijk.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. And of course, Sheringham and Solskjaer on the bench if we need them.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. That's all we've got time for on the opening episode of Table 442. You can subscribe to us on YouTube at Table 442. And you can follow us on Twitter at Table44T1. That's 4 as in the number 4, spelled FOUR. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeFish08. And where can they follow you, Aaron?
Also on Twitter, AaroPrid, so AAROPRID.
Cool. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll be back with another show next week. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Bye. Thank you.